What I know for sure is that speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we all have.
I've had rainbows in my clouds. And the thing to do, it seems to me, is to prepare yourself so that you can be a rainbow in somebody else's cloud.
We all really, really love one another. Deep down, we all love one another, and we need to get back to that.
Hi, welcome to the Authentically You podcast. I'm Dr. Julie Ducharme, and I am so excited today to have Jessica on my show here. Met Jessica through my beloved friend Travis. So thank you, Travis, for all your connects. And Jessica, gosh, your bio is so amazing and so long. I don't even know where to start. But of course, one of the things that you're known for is being in the top 4 of American Idol. From reading this. And I would love for you to tell our listeners about your journey and how you ended up where you're at today. And I know that's probably a long story. So maybe we can go for the highlights, the important parts that you want our listeners to hear about. Because I mean, as you guys, you have to go to, okay, am I saying this right? Is it Meuse, last name Meuse?
Yep.
Okay, so you guys have to go to jessicamuse.com to read her bio because it's amazing. But Jessica, I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'm going to let you tell us about your journey and maybe how you got into this and where you are now for our listeners.
Well, when I first started out, believe it or not, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a vet. And then I found out about euthanization, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And then I started singing a lot. I was always really, really drawn to just music anyway. I would always listen to it on the radio, and I had the old school little tape cassette, and I would wait for my favorite song to come on, and I'd record it because my goal was to memorize every song on the radio because I was a very strange child, and that's what I did. So I ended up knowing, like, every song ever, and I would always sing, and then one day my dad got me a karaoke machine, and I had a ball with that, and I sang every single day. I don't know, it was something that I loved, and I did it all the time, and it was, you know, I feel like when you discover something with the heart of a child, and you're not looking for fame, you're not looking for anything in particular, you're just enjoying it, I think that tells you something about who you are.
Yeah.
So I started playing music. I picked up violin when I was, I was a little older. Like a lot of kids start when they're super young, but I picked it up probably at 11 or 12 years old, and I played it for years and years. I sang actually in public for the first time ever when I was 10. I was scared to freaking death, and I remember I thought I was going to pass out because my hands went numb, and I was terrified. And I fell in love with it. I just fell in love with music, and I knew it's what I wanted to do. And I kept performing and playing out because I wasn't going to let the stage fright stop me. It's actually one thing I still live up to this day. If I'm afraid, it's not going to stop me from doing it. But let's see. I mean, I really started with violin, believe it or not, and I was classically trained. I got into a symphony orchestra. We moved around a lot. Ended up in Slapout, Alabama, middle of freaking nowhere. And I joined a symphony where I read music, everything. I worked my way from the back to my first chair in my section, and I honestly just love hearing all the parts come together, and I have a very strong bond with classical music because of that.
I love
but it also
that.
taught me, you can hand me any instrument with strings and I will figure it out. And that's actually how I picked up guitar. And I taught myself guitar when I was in high school, actually at the very end of middle school, either 7th or 8th grade, because I was what you call a loser in high school, actually all of school. Because I moved around so much, I transferred schools quite a bit. And I remember I lived in Florida for 2 years, and in those 2 years, I probably went to 5 different schools.
Oh, wow.
Because bullying was so bad. And people when you're the new kid, they either love you or they just target you. And I was the target. And I think it was because I was always really, really tender-hearted and very sweet and very, quiet. Mm-hmm. And I was the kid who draws pictures of monsters and things I made up in my mind. And I still do that. I just don't care what other people think anymore.
You had a great imagination is what you had. I mean, my kids do that right now, and that my daughter's 11 and she'll probably be doing that her entire life. But I feel that for you because I ran into that too. And so when you say that, you know, it hits me because it's right. They either love you or they hate you. And if they hate you, they're going to make your life miserable.
And they did. They did. They really did. And I actually, when I got into high school, I was so tired of being called fat all the time that I just stopped eating. I quit going to lunch because people threw food at me there.
Oh, my gosh.
And so I would go to the library. I'm dead serious. People
Wow.
talk to me now, and they're like, I can't believe that they did that to you. I'm like, oh, yeah, they did. I was just a little awkward kid who liked dragons. Now I'm just an awkward adult who likes dragons, so I don't care what other people think.
My daughter loves dragons, too, so you now have an extra dragon lover friend.
Yeah, I always say it's my spirit animal. I have a giant dragon on my back, actually.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, so because I didn't really have people to waste my time, like I didn't go to parties, I wasn't into drinking, I wasn't sleeping around, never got into drugs. It's just not interesting to me. It's a waste of time. So while everyone in high school was out doing whatever they do, I taught myself guitar, and I started writing songs. And I wrote about my feelings. I wrote poetry. I was in a lot of writing and lit classes, actually, in high school. And I was actually taking college courses while I was in high school, and I got out a semester early to get the hell away from all of them.
Yeah.
So I just kind of took off, and I kept performing and doing my own thing. And I was going to college full-time for several years. I'm actually back in college now. I'm a junior, and I'm getting a psych degree.
Awesome.
And yeah, I believe in education. I love to learn. I think you should never stop because as far as your brain goes, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yep.
And I'm also training to be a certified personal trainer with NASM right now. So I've got a pretty full plate. Plus, I'm singing full time. This is my job. It's my life. It's what I like to do.
Yeah.
But I just kept performing everywhere. Even while I was in college, I would book all these gigs, and sometimes I would drive out of state. I would go to Florida, Georgia, wherever, and I wouldn't get back until sometimes the wee hours of the morning. And then I would wake up and go to class and fall asleep on the table. I was so tired. I look back, I have to get my 8 hours now, or I'm a little butthole the entire next day.
But you know what? I love that, though. I love the drive that you had. I very rarely run into college kids who have that much drive. I mean, you were doing basically the side hustle. You were going to school and then working your dream, which, I mean, I hear people like this all the time from, you know, guys on the Shark Tank, you know, talking about how they were. I remember Mark Cuban was like, yeah, all I had was a towel to sleep on while I was building my company.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't even have a blanket, you know, and Damon was talking about how he worked at Red Lobster and then was working his dream on the side. So I love that because, I mean, that shows your character because you were like, okay, forget these bullies. Like, I'm going to go live my dream. And that's what I'm going to do. And if I got to drive and be up late and fall asleep in the class, there it is. I mean, I love that. And so, so you're doing all of this. How did The Voice and American Idol come into play? Because I know that you were on both of those and you've toured.
Yeah.
And you did amazing. So how did you go from what you were doing there into that?
Well, while I was in college full time, I actually got a phone call because I was playing out at like every single open mic I could find. Plus I was playing gigs on the weekends and stuff like that. And I was doing school. So I was pretty overloaded. But they gave me a phone call actually one day. I think it was before I had a show that night. And they wanted to do a private audition. So I freaked out being this kid from Slapout, never having been to Hollywood, knowing anything really about the music industry, very limited knowledge of the entire music world. Wow. And I freaked out, and I was like, oh, my gosh, absolutely. And I was like, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. So they fly me out to Hollywood, first time ever. I was 21, and I discovered alcohol, and it was fun. And I made the most of my time there. I had so much fun. And I worked my ass off, and I went to every rehearsal, every stage blocking, every camera blocking, because I'm a workaholic. I hustle. That is all I know how to do. And I just remember the blind audition came, and I was scared to death. I've never been on a stage like that. I was looking at, like, childhood role models for me, like Christina Aguilera and Adam Levine. Like, I grew up listening to old school Maroon 5 and stuff like that. CeeLo's there, and I remember his FU song, and I was like, oh, my God, it's CeeLo Green. And then Blake Shelton, of course. I grew up listening to Old Red, and none of them turned around.
my God.
And I was like, oh crap, I'm not going to make it. And I immediately fell apart. And I went home feeling, I think defeated would be an understatement.
Sure.
To be that young, honestly, I look back now and I'm like, 21, you're not an adult. I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't know anything about the music industry, and I only know what I know now from being in it.
Yeah.
And it just broke my heart, and it sucks so bad. And Christina Aguilera told me that I shriek, and it just was like so painful to hear that from someone I grew up loving and adoring her voice.
Sure.
And like Blake told me that I was off, and I was like, I don't know what that means. Blake Shelton, help me. It was just so vague, and I don't know if it was legit or if they were producer fed, or I don't know. You know, those shows are weird.
Yeah.
But it just hurts so much to be that young and to have that giant experience, really, really, truly in your heart think, oh, my God, I'm going to make it. This is my shot. And then it just falls apart. So I went home. I went back to college full-time, working my ass off, playing the gigs. I couldn't stop, so I just continued. I kept writing songs. And the next year, because I was playing out so much, I did this big songwriting competition at Workplay in Birmingham, Alabama, which is still very much like a second home to me. And the owners always welcomed me there. I became really good friends with everyone. They're amazing folks. They always have me at gigs. They always ask for me to come up and be a special guest. And this guy was there who was actually scouting for somebody who worked at 19 Entertainment, who is with Fremantle, that does American Idol, and they do all of those shows like that. So he comes up to me and says, we want to set up a call, set up audition, whatever. And I was like, absolutely, cool, whatever. And I don't want to say that I didn't care, but I knew what the voice did, and I was like, haha, okay, I got you. I'll do it, but I'm not getting my hopes up like I did last year.
Yeah.
And so I went and did the audition, and they put me through. And I was like, okay, this is weird. And then I kept making it through. And then they're like, okay, you made it to the judge round. And then I went to the judge round where I was the last person to audition all day. It was like 11 p.m. at night.
Whoa.
Then they give you the MMPI, which is that massive personality test. And by the end of it, you actually do want to hurt people. So it's a trick.
So wait,
that
hold
personality
on.
test.
They give you a personality test. I didn't know this.
Yeah. Well, you have to. They have to make sure you're not like Dexter or something going on the show.
Oh, goodness.
But
wow.
Look, that test is over 570-something questions.
Oh my gosh.
But get this. They gave me the wrong Scantron. They gave me the Scantron for the minors, which was only 300-something bubbles, and I ran out of bubbles. And I went up to the lady, and I said, I'm not filling this in again.
Yeah.
I told her, I was like, I will not be on the show. I'm not filling this in again. And she goes, no, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Because it was the longest day ever. I'd been listening to people go, la, 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 and screaming and yelling and singing all over the room for like 8+ hours.
Yeah.
It's like a weird form of Russian torture to just stick you in a room and just like do that to you. And then you're the last person and you have to be camera ready. And of course, like my makeup is sweating off. I can smell myself. I'm like, this is so gross. And that's why when you watch my audition, I walked in and I was like, oh, God. Like, you could see it on my face. I was like, I can smell myself. And now that I've told you, you'll never unsee it.
Yeah, well, now I haven't watched that one yet, so I'm going to have to go and watch it now. But do you think also, is this process they do, is it to see who can break and who can handle it? Is that a way that they weed people out?
I completely believe that reality television is just a psychological test to see how they can stress you and when you will snap. Because if you notice on reality TV, the moment you snap is when they throw 5 cameras on you.
Yeah.
So if you cry, if you throw a fit, if you fight, they will have cameras all up on you and you will have TV time.
Oh gosh. Okay.
because it makes a story.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm reading Melissa DiArabian's book right now. She's a Food Network star. She's a friend that lives out here by me, and she actually echoes what you're saying about reality TV in her books because she's done reality TV. And so I was finding it really intriguing. So what you're saying is matching up with what she's saying.
Oh, yeah. And the reality is never what you actually see at home on your television. The reality, if they had a camera that recorded what was going on behind everything, that would be a great reality show.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So, I mean, so you made it through, American Idol. I mean, you get into the midst of this, and I see that you were the first person in history to actually sing your own song that you wrote. And which one? I wasn't sure which spot you were in when you did that one.
Well, when I did my initial audition, when I told you I could smell myself and I was exhausted and then I had to take the crazy person test, I had actually been out the day before in Atlanta, and that's the reason pretty much the biggest reason I took that audition was because I was already going to be there for Warped Tour. And I played the day before in the sun all day and was out with a bunch of the rockers out there. So I was like dead inside after that. So when I went to the audition, I was like, well, I don't really know what I'm going to sing. I wasn't really prepared because I kind of do that. I kind of wing a lot of stuff. And I was like, I guess I'll just sing my song because if they don't like me, I want it to be for my stuff, not because of how I sing someone else's song. I want them to hear me, and I want to know if my song sucks or not. So I just sang Blue Eyed Lie. And that's how I got through on the initial audition. So then later on, what was it, like top 8 or something, they had a Back to the Beginning theme, and they revisited all the audition songs. And I was like, oh, cool. That's my own song. I already know all the words, so we're good to go.
Yeah.
And so I just went up there. I sang Blue Eyed Lie, had no freaking idea I was the first person to do that. And then when I discovered I had a wiki page, I was like, oh, damn, I got a Wikipedia. And then that's where I saw that.
That is very cool. Well, I mean, you've had this amazing ride as I've been reading your bio and following you. And I know from a few other friends who are in the music industry that the music industry is not easy. It's tough. It is a tough industry. And you recently put a post out that was a really vulnerable post, but I think probably, I mean, at least for me, to see another woman that can express the struggles that she's having and not be afraid to talk about it, because our society expects us to have perfect bodies, perfect lives, be perfect women, have perfect families, perfect children. And the pressure from that is absolutely amazing. And of course, you're in the public eye as well. And we talked about this off mic, but I was hoping you would share a little bit about your post, the dog you're getting, and a little bit about that, because I know it impacted me in a positive way when you shared that. And so I was hoping you'd share that with our listeners.
Well, I'm glad, because the only reason I shared it is just because I know that there's definitely got to be other people who are going through at least something similar that they relate in some way, and it helps. So I'm glad to hear that it did something positive for you. Mm-hmm. I've had an abusive relationship. I have had severe anxiety all my life. Like, I pass out. I will just faint and fall to the ground unconscious. Wow. And sometimes I freak out, like in crowds and stuff, and I get a little bit of social anxiety. And sometimes people can be really judgmental when they don't understand that. So, like, they might mistake me for being rude when I'm really just, like, sensory overload and I'm about to, like, explode and freak out. But I've been talking to some friends of mine that I actually met some people at the Waltrip Brothers Charity Championship dinner. It's a company called the Dog Knowledge, and they brought a dog, and they gave it to a Marine whose dog had been stolen from him during all the flooding and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And it was so heartbreaking to see that. But the very next day, it was the big golf tournament that the dinner was like a precursor for, and the dogs were at Hole 5. So I spent a lot of time at Hole 5 because I love dogs. And I just got to talking and chatting with the owner, Debbie. And later on, I went home and I followed up and I told the executive director of the whole championship, thank you for having me, and, networking stuff. And we just started talking, and I got to kind of know him as a person and now as a friend. And I told him a little bit of the things I've been through. Like, there was a period in my life where I relied heavily on Xanax to stay sane throughout the day. And it honestly just made me a zombie. And I had the timer going on my phone. And, like, I didn't want to die, but I also was apathetic to the idea if I didn't wake up. Like, I was kind of like, my life sucks, so I don't really care. But I couldn't do that to my family. I can't do that to my friends. There's too many people I love. And at that point, it's not about being selfish. It's about suck it up and fix your situation. So I took the Xanax and I threw it away. And now I know as a trigger or as like a red flag to do something and handle my stress, when I feel like I need a Xanax, that means it's getting too far. So now it's more of like a Post-it note for me. Mm-hmm. And when I get stressed out, my hair falls out, which is really, really awesome, especially because I was 25 years old at the time, and it was in the midst of this really abusive relationship. And I took a shower, and I pushed my hair back because I'd washed it. I was brushing it, and I noticed there was a giant bald spot on my head. And as a 25-year-old woman, I freaked the hell out because I remember I took a picture. I sent it to my mom. She's like, "Oh, it looks like you have a little bald spot." I was like, "Oh, really? Is that what it looks like?" And so I went to the doctor, and they were saying it's stress-induced, it's alopecia areata. I kind of told them what's going on. I ended up with basically a pharmacy of antidepressants, and I never took those. I did have Klonopin, but that's when I fell into the Xanax rabbit hole. Okay. And because of all that, I kind of told my friend at the Waltrip Brothers thing, and he was like, "Well, I talked to the people at the Dog Knowledge. I talked to Debbie, and she recommended that you take the brother of the dog that was given to the Marine that night. I got to figure out when I can go get him, but I really can't wait." And it's just really crazy to me because I had no idea at the time that I already met my dog.
I have a friend who actually has a company that does this, and I've been able to watch her over the years, bring these dogs to people, military people, special needs people, people like yourself who have anxiety, people who have seizures. And, it's really amazing what these dogs can do. And, I appreciate your honesty about, the different things like the Xanax and things you were taking, because really doctors push that. Oh, you're feeling depressed? Just take some antidepressant medicines. Who cares what the side effects are or what it's going to do to you? We'll just pump you full of as much drugs as we can. And, yeah. As women, we have a lot of pressure. And for you too, I mean, you're talking about, you're a performer, and at the same time you have this anxiety, which is amazing to me that you're getting on stage and you're fighting really the fear that you have and the anxiety and all this stuff, and you're still willing to get on stage. And a lot of times people think, I do a lot of stuff in front of different groups of people, and people think, oh, you love it. And I always tell people, my favorite thing is to sit in the corner and read a book. That's what I love to do. And I do have anxiety. The first time I went to go do my first radio show, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to pass out driving because I had so much anxiety about it. And I never told anyone about that for a long time because people just didn't think anything. And when I finally did tell my friend, she goes, well, you seem like you were totally fine. And I'm like, well, because I'm that girl that says, suck it up and deal with it. You got to go do it, Julie. But I think it's so important for people like yourself. I mean, for someone who's in the eye all the time and on stage, and no one thinks there's an issue, right? They're like, oh, she's great. She's on stage. Look at, she's done all this stuff. But to understand that we all have struggles, and we're trying to figure out how to deal with those struggles. Anxiety and depression are two common things that women have all the time across the board. But it's not addressed. People just don't want to address or talk about it. Or like you said, they don't really understand it. So they're rude, or they, don't take into account what's going on at that moment. And, I've become very sensitive. I didn't have anxiety early on in my life. And I used to play sports at a high level. But as I started to move into other things that were a little bit out of my range of comfortable, that's where things kind of started to get a little like, you want me to go talk on TV? I don't know, about that. So, I just sympathize with you, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I know that there's a lot of women out there struggling with this, but they're embarrassed. They don't want people to know, that they're struggling.
There's that negative stigma on mental health and like getting therapy and getting help and all these things that it deters people from talking about it. And I don't think it's negative. Like, just because it's kind of like an invisible illness type thing.
Right.
So anxiety, you can't look at someone and say, oh, they have anxiety, or, oh, you're schizophrenic, or you have this, or you have that. But that's actually another reason I'm going back to school, because I want to get my psych degree, and I might end up being the 5,000-year-old psychiatrist. I don't know. But because at this rate, it's going to take me a long-ass time to get through med school. But if it's the difference between like somebody walking around untreated, or they have if it takes one pill, or if it takes a couple therapy sessions or cognitive behavioral stuff, like, I want to be able to be a voice for them, and that's the least I can do right now. And maybe one day I can actually do something about it, because I feel like mental health is something that people are trying so hard to talk about it, because it needs to be talked about. But there's so many people who aren't doing anything about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And, someone said to me the other day, well, if you're not feeling well, you go to a medical doctor, right? If you got a problem with your tooth, you go to a dentist. So if you have something happening internally in your mind, why wouldn't you go to a therapist? Like, well, we go to... So I agree with you, and I think one of the best ways to combat this is for people to hear people like yourself and myself talking about, hey, we have anxieties, but we're being proactive. We're finding the right paths. We're learning how to deal with them. You getting the dog, I think is fantastic. They're so therapeutic, and, a great way to go about that. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I know that, like you said, there isn't a great stigma about that, but I think that we can keep breaking the stigmas by sharing that. So thank you so much for being willing to not only post that on social media and be vulnerable and take a chance with people saying negative things to you, but also sharing it here. So I think that's amazing. And once you get the dog, of course, you're going to have to post more pictures so we can see that adorable dog, because I remember seeing the puppy pictures.
Oh, I can't wait.
So cute.
I can't freaking wait.
Oh, so cute. Well, I wanted to talk about a few of your projects you have going on. You mentioned to me about a crowdfunding project that you're working on. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and so our listeners can see how they can support you with this project?
Well, it hasn't been officially released yet, so I think the best way for people to give support right now is to follow me on socials, so that when I do release the information, they are able to help out. Because if you know about crowdfunding, I mean, a lot of people don't, but it's all about what contributors contribute. So all of my fans, I'm going to need as much help as I can get, obviously, to make this happen, because it's not something I can do out of pocket. But it's going to be really fun, I think. I've been talking to the studio. It's up in Boston, and once it's official, I'll say their name and everything. Mm-hmm. But they've been really great so far. We're putting the campaign together actually this Friday, and it looks like I'm going to be doing a promo single and everything. So I actually have a lot of new material. It's going to be an EP, probably just 5 or 6 songs, but I think it's going to be good enough to kick off 2020 and say, Jess is back.
Awesome. Well, and speaking of 2020, we are super excited because Jessica is going to be at our Lead and Empower Her She Talks event in Nashville on January 25th. And so I just am so excited to not only get to hang out with you in person, but for our people to hear your story and also some of your music. These things are always amazing. And every time I get to add someone like yourself, Jessica, into our family of the Lead and Empower Her family, I'm always like, it's a blood pack. We're not letting you out. No, I'm just kidding. It's great because, what the biggest thing that we're trying to do is bring together women who really want to support each other, and that there's no barriers between us. We want to be each other's biggest fans because there's enough to go around, and we want to support each other. So we're very excited to have you at this event. And I know many of our listeners, as well as people attending. And this time what's really cool is we're going to have a live option that people can buy tickets for. So if they can't come, they can actually get a ticket online to watch it as too. So we're super excited about that. And finally, I know you said follow you on social media. Can you give us your social media links and your website links so all our people listening know where they can go to find you?
Yeah, so my official website is jessicameuse.com, and that's M-E-U-S-E, like me use this, me use that. My Twitter, no, seriously, you'll never forget it now.
Yeah,
but my Twitter and Instagram, they're both at Jess Meuse, and again, it's M-E-U-S-E. And then, let's see, what else? My Facebook is facebook.com/idol Jessica Meuse, because I got that URL when I was on American Idol, and now I can't change it. And, Anything else is probably right there on my website. There's a bunch of links at the bottom if I forgot to say anything.
Yeah. No, we'll also, if you're driving and you can't access this, don't worry. We'll put all those links in this link that we send out, and you guys can always go back to it and get that. So if you're like, I'm driving right now, I can't write that down, don't worry. It'll be all in the link. And we're so excited. And you can also go to Jessica's website, listen to her music. It's fantastic, guys. And as always, as we talk about, let's continue to support our fellow women and everything they're doing, because this is what it's all about. So thank you so much, Jessica, for being on the show. And as I always say, live, love, laugh, and always be your authentic self.